Join us for today's service. We believe that God has something specific for you today, and we're excited to share it with you. Here at Life Church, we exist to be a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus. Whether you're a regular or someone who's joining us for the first time, we want you to feel welcome no matter where you are in your spiritual journey. We believe that church is more than a Sunday morning service. We believe it's not a destination you drive to, but a movement that you get to be a part of. So, if you're new to Life Church, we'd love to connect with you and get to know you better. Just click the link in the text box below and fill out the connection card. As a thank you for taking the time to fill it out, we'll send you a free gift by email. We also would like to encourage you to visit our website at www.lchw.cc. There you can find out everything you need to know about Life Church, including information about our services, ministries, and upcoming events. If you would like to support our vision and help us continue to impact the lives for Jesus, we invite you to give. Your generosity allows us to provide resources, support, and opportunities for growth in our church and make a difference in the lives of the people in our very own community. You can give in a couple of different ways. You can visit our website at www.lchw.cc and give securely online. Or you can simply text any amount to 84321. We give because we have a give first God and want to honor Him with what He has given to us. So we thank you in advance for your generosity. So once again, welcome to Life Church. We hope that today's service will encourage and inspire you and that you'll leave feeling more connected to God and to Life Church family than ever before.
You a chance to double a cash reward. Police want your help finding two men on the run in Greene County. This one, Josh Pruitt, is accused of stealing cars this week. The crimes happened on Battlefield Road and Mulder Avenue near Highway 65. We first profiled Pruitt as a fugitive in October, again as a suspect in car thefts. Pruitt is 39 years old. He's 6'2". You can see he's a bit scruffy in this picture with some facial hair. If you've seen either fugitive, call Crime Stoppers at 417-869-TIPS. That's 869-8477. You could get a cash reward of up to $1,000, and your identity is protected even when you claim the money.
My name's Josh Pruitt. I spent 25 years trapped in a life of addiction and crime, and this is my redemption story. So I was born in 1981 to a Don and Deborah Pruitt. First 10 years of my life, completely normal. Other than whiz poor, I was raised on welfare while my dad would defraud the government, working side jobs. He wasn't really a criminal, but he was a little bit shady. So 10 years later, would move from California back to Missouri. Mom and dad would split up. She would walk out on dad. Dad would never get over mom. I'd carry the bitterness along that my dad carried with him as well. At the age of 13, I had tried marijuana. Age of 14, I was hooked on methamphetamines. By the age of 17, I was a high school dropout. Now I was bitter, I was mad at the world. The identity I found, I had lost. Now I was looking for a new identity, and I found one in a life of crime and addiction. So from the age of 17 to 20, I was a meth user, but I didn't like the things I was having to do to get the drugs. So I started producing and manufacturing meth. By the age of 20, I had fallen asleep transporting a meth lab and had almost lost my life. That was the first time, and many times I'd almost lose my life in my addiction. From the age of 20, I was in a relationship. So from 2000 to 2011, I was engaged. I had a fiance. I was producing meth. I wasn't really committing a lot of crime at this time, just really the addiction and producing meth. But in 2011, I'd lose my fiance to a tragic accident. She would break her neck in an ATV accident. So from 2012 to 2021, I was suicidal. I was using meth in a different way this time. Now I'm injecting meth and I hurt. I went on a crime spree. I was antagonizing local law enforcement to kill me. I wanted to go out death by cop, but God stepped in. So from 2013 to 2021, it was revolving door, it was addiction, it was crime, it was prison. I would get out just long enough to go back on a rampage, get high again, sell, commit more crime, go back to prison. This brings me to 2021. I was in prison leaving prison, facing 40 years back in prison. This means I was getting out of prison just long enough to do what I always done, but again, commit more crime, go back to my addiction, go back to the lifestyle, the only lifestyle I knew. So I reached out to Freeway Ministries. I was accepted into the program. I reached out to John Stroop, Paul Choate, the Josh Aniga types, and I was accepted into Freeway Ministries, but I came in front of a judge that had knew me. He had sent me to prison on 16 felonies. He's the one that labeled me the prior persistent offender. He put that career criminal jacket on me. I was at 39 years old. I had never had a job. I wasn't a taxpayer. I was a career criminal. They were not willing to release me back into society. So I bonded out. I called Casey Merrick, John Stroop, and told him I'm on the streets, but I wanted to honor my commitment. And I believe that's where God truly started moving my life. 2 months into the program, I surrendered my life to Christ. See, I was 39 years old, and I always believed in God, but I was not saved. I was far from saved. So 2 months in the program, still no deal. I'm going to court. I'm facing 40 years in prison. Everybody's telling me just do the next right thing, trust in God. It's like, man, I just met God. I was like, that's a bold statement. About 6 months into the program, I see everybody getting these like really good deals. I'm like, what am I doing here? I was like, it was hard. It was hard to see everybody getting all these like great deals, getting out of prison, getting on probation, and I'm still facing all this time. I remember walking into court and I was under conviction of the Holy Spirit, and it was just a court date. I pled guilty to all those counts. So now I'm going back into court 2 months later for the gavel to be slammed, for Judge Mountjoy to send me to prison. And I wanted to do what I always did before. I wanted to run. I wanted to go back to that lifestyle that I had always known, but I didn't. I continued walking into faith. I was being discipled by the local church. I was paired up with Coach Larry King. He became my master discipler from Crossway Baptist Church, and he walked it out with me. The local church walked this season of my life out with me and held my hand and told me, don't give up, keep going, keep going. And I did, and I think it was my 10th month into the program. John Stroop, Casey Merrick had walked me into the courtroom. We're walking in there. I pled guilty on everything. And John Stroop said something to me that I'd never forget. He said, it's starting to look like a prison ministry for you. And my knees buckled. I got weak. My stomach turned. It went upside down, you know. And I wanted to run, but I didn't. I prayed to God instead. I said, God, whatever you have for me in this, if that's where you want me, if that's where my ministry is going to be, then that's where it's going to be. So I continue on. I didn't take off. I didn't run. I showed up to court. We went into the courtroom. The prosecutor did a great job that day. He prosecuted the case. Everybody in the courtroom wanted to send me to prison. Even I wanted to send me to prison. But God showed up, and through my faithfulness, I believe that's where I learned how to trust in God. I showed up to something that I had never showed up to before. And Judge Mountjoy, he saw a new man that day. I believe he saw a new creation in Christ. Josh Pruitt was doing things that he had never done before. You couldn't get me in front of a courtroom unless you beat me up, drug me in there in handcuffs. But I showed up, and God showed favor on me that day. So he gave me probation. That's why I'm here today, because of a faithful judge that had discernment that day. But I'll never forget what he said to me. He stood me up. He said, Josh Pruitt, you're right. You have been called. Respond to your calling. Judge Mountjoy said that to me. A judge that sent me to prison over and over again. Now he was releasing me to the community, to a society I had never known. What he did in that courtroom was a big deal, but what King Jesus did, 2 months of that program, I was truly set free then. I was walking in freedom, and there's proof, because I was willing to go wherever God had called me to, even if it was into that prison cell. I believe in that courtroom I got to witness God become the Lord of my life. My life has radically changed. When I met King Jesus, my life has never looked the same. I get to do things today, not because I'm a preacher full of $25 words, not because I'm a good public speaker, because Christ's revelation in my life, there's proof of salvation in my life. My life looked one way for 25 years. I was a drug addicted, meth cook, car thief, the worst of the worst. I was like Paul, and I felt like Paul, chief sinner. I was broken, I was hurt. But I met with King Jesus. Today I'm in full-time ministry. Today I've been called to Orlando, Florida. I'm the house manager down here. I get to lock arms with other brothers and sisters in Christ, and I get to walk alongside of them, point them to Christ. Today I get to walk in integrity. I get to be called a man of God. Through my walk, there's proof of my salvation. Today I work at a local Christian school. Today I get to pour in and minister to kids at an age group where I was broken and I hurt. My life doesn't look the same today. Today I've been set free, redeemed, born again, child of God. But the coolest thing is I got joy. I've got peace in my life, and I found it in the local church. Guys, it's not what Freeway Ministries does. It's not what John Stroop does or Josh Aniga does or I do. It's the local church that comes beside these men, that came beside me and walked alongside me in these hard seasons of my life and held my hand through it. I have grandmas and grandpas and godly men and women in my life today, and I found them in the local church. I can't believe that a guy of lawlessness and a child of wrath found his best friends and his joy and peace in the local church. That's my comeback story. I was 39 years old, a loser, a 5-time loser that spent most of his life in addiction and a life of crime, hopelessness, lostness. And today I'm walking in freedom, and I have joy, I have peace, and I owe it all to King Jesus. Thank you.
Well, it is such an honor and such a privilege to be here with you guys this morning at Life Church. If you want to go ahead and make your way, we're going to be in Mark chapter 5. I'm going to read those first 20 verses. I know that sounds like a lot, but I promise I will talk fast if you listen fast. But I just want to share with you about my story and what Freeway is doing here in Central Florida, and also just about the people group that we reach. So I'm going to share a few statistics with you this morning, because no matter who you are in this room or where you're sitting, all of us, according to the world, we fall in a statistic group where we come from, economically, geographically, ethnicity. All of us fall in this statistic group. And a lot of times the world says whatever group you're in, that's just kind of the label you carry with you for the rest of your life. That's just you. You're in here, you'll always be in here. That's who you are. But when we read about the God of the Bible, he takes that and he throws them away. He says, no, if you're a child of God, I give you a new label. You're a blood-bought, born-again child of God. You no longer have to identify yourself by the way the world looks at you or by the world says or identifies you by, but you are a child of God. So a few numbers for you this morning. 42,915. That's last year died from a car wreck. Almost 43,000. 49,000 people from gun violence died last year. 46,000 people from suicide. Those are staggering numbers. But this next one, 112,000. 112,000 men, women, and children died last year from a drug overdose throughout the United States. That's over 300 people a day in the United States, every single day, die from a drug overdose. And if you look, 55 of those people actually take place right here in Central Florida. 55 Floridians in Central Florida die every single day from a drug overdose. A large percent of that is right where we're at, where you guys are at, here, and where God has called us to. We've now hit the numbers where more people have died from fentanyl overdoses than Afghanistan, Iraq, and Vietnam War combined. More people have died. And fentanyl hasn't been around that long. It has from the medical standpoint, but the way they're making it now and manufacturing it, it hasn't been around that long. And we've had more deaths than Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan war combined. Just in the last 2 years, the deaths from fentanyl in Central Florida has increased over 400%. And here's the thing, it's everyone. As I started using, I spent 14 years in addiction. I was on the south side of Springfield. I know you guys, most of you don't know Springfield, but I was in the basements of my friends whose parents were doctors and lawyers. This was mansions and gated communities. This wasn't just that side of the track type of thing, which is what often people think. But if you read about it and you look about it, Ann Milgram, she's the administrator of the DEA, she talks about this. She said, it doesn't matter from large town America to rural America. No community is safe from this poison. Our youth, America's youth currently right now, are dying at the highest rate in the United States history, and it's from this, drug overdose and addiction. She goes on to talk about it. She says, no community is safe. We need to start spreading the word. And I agree with her, but the word she's talking about and the word that we're talking about this morning are two different words. We do need to spread the word because there is only one answer to this. It's the hope in Jesus Christ. That is it. That can give you freedom, that can break any chain, that can give you hope, and can break any of those statistic labels that this world and society gives you. And it's not just where we're at, it's all over the country. So we put this label on once these people become like this, and we say they're too far gone. They're just lost causes. There's nothing else we can do. So a lot of times the answer is just send them away, right? Just send them away. Send them to prison, send them to jail. And listen, we love local law enforcement. We partner with them. We partner with probation and parole. We go in the jails. We go in the prisons. We believe that you need to answer for the crimes that you commit. We're not saying that. But if you look at the recidivism rates, no matter what city or what state you're in, you see that people get out of prison, and within 3 to 5 years, over 85% of prisoners go right back, which means it's not working because they don't need a habit change. They need a heart change. And only Jesus Christ can do that. Only Jesus Christ can do that. Because all we do is we hear about the negative impact that a drug addict makes in his community, right? We hear about the negative impact that the drug addict makes in his home, at his workplace, in the neighborhood. But what you don't see all over the news is what happens, like we just saw with Josh Pruitt, when one radically changed person gets sold out for Jesus Christ and starts impacting his community and his family and his neighborhood in a completely different way. I want to share with you about this statistic we see in Mark chapter 5. I'm going to read this. It's verse 1 starting. It said, "They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs." These are burial tombs. This is where they would put dead bodies. "He lived among the tombs, and no one can bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones." Verse 6, "And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, 'What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? I adjure you by God, do not torment me.' For he was saying to him, 'Come out of the man, you unclean spirit.' And Jesus asked him, 'What is your name?' He replied, 'My name is Legion, for we are many.' He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, 'Send us to the pigs, let us enter them.' So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out, entered in the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank and into the sea and drowned in the sea. The herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country. And people came to see what it was that had happened, and they came to Jesus, and they saw this demon-possessed man, the one who had the legion, sitting there, it says, clothed in his right mind. And they were afraid." That was their response. This man's life was radically changed, and they were afraid. What'd they do? Verse 16, it says, "And those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and to the pigs, and they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. And he did not permit him, but said to him, 'Go home to your friends. Tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you.' And he went away. The man was obedient. He went away and began to proclaim the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for this man." See, this demon-possessed man, he was just a statistic. The Gerasenes, they did everything they could to change it, to tame him and change him. Nothing worked. So they sent him away. They thought he was a lost cause. A lot of people thought Josh Pruitt was a lost cause. 25 years in addiction. His whole testimony video is incredible. But he's in a high pursuit chase with the Springfield Police Department. He specialized in making mobile meth labs, also ran a huge car theft ring in southern Missouri area. One of the last chases, he blew up the meth lab. 40% of his body is burned. Josh Pruitt now has keys to every single door at Orlando Christian Prep. He's now the facility manager. Do you know that thieves and drug dealers make great van drivers for your church? They're driving chariots for the Lord now, amen? That's what they do. Do you realize that person that you see on that street corner holding up the sign, asking for money, knowing they're just going to go get their next bottle or their next bag of dope, that could be a next missionary, a church planter? Just like that song we sing, he can use anything, he can use anyone. That's what God does. I spent 14 years in addiction. I was arrested over 20 times from Springfield, Missouri to Travis County, Texas. The police tried to do everything they could to catch me and tame me, and nothing worked. I wasn't raised in church. My family didn't come from a church background. It wasn't until 2015 when I was in the cardiac ICU in Springfield, Missouri. I was on my deathbed. For the fourth time in a 16-week period, I went to the cardiac ICU. One of the times somebody found my body. To this day, I still don't know if I was in a ditch, a hotel, or a car. Somebody found my body. They called me in. I was unresponsive. I woke up, tubes out my body. That was the third time. Guess what? I went out and I went right back to it. The fourth time I woke up out of my drug-induced coma, John Stroop, which is the founder of Freeway, he's sitting in the corner of my room. That day, he took the time to take a phone call, to take the time out of his day and do a visit and tell me about Jesus. Tell me about Freeway and the program. I was going to be homeless again. I didn't have anywhere to go. He told me about the discipleship house. And listen, we're strict. It's a 1-year-long program, but we get in your business. We know your finances. We tell people this isn't a place to come get sober. Sobriety is not success. A relationship with Jesus Christ is success, because if you have that, then sobriety is going to be a byproduct. So we get in their business. We don't let them have relationships for a year. We said, you're not fit to be somebody's boyfriend or girlfriend or start courting. So we check their phones. If they're texting a girl in the men's house, if they're Facebook messaging a girl, they get kicked out. Like, we hold them accountable. So he said, slow down. Let me tell you about the program before you say yes. I had nowhere to go. I was going to be homeless again, living in my truck. So I said yes. After he explained it, I had no intention of following Jesus, but Jesus had every intention of using me for his perfect plan, and I'm so, so grateful for that. This man, no one thought he would ever get out of this. No one thought he would ever live a life outside of those burial tombs, because he was just a statistic. But as you read in the scripture and in the verses, as it keeps going, we get to see what happens when a statistic encounters Christ. Because what we see in verse 6 is this man fall down on his face before Jesus. And what had happened, the disciples just get out, and I imagine the disciples are pulling the boat up on the shore. They just come from the other side, because if you read Mark chapter 4, Jesus has been teaching all day. He said, okay, let's go to the other side of the sea. They go through this big storm. They get to the other side of the sea. The disciples were scared for their life. They finally get there, and it said immediately, as soon as Jesus' feet hit the ground, he heard a noise and a man running at him full speed. And could you imagine the disciples as they're just lugging and pulling this boat up on shore, and they just hear somebody screaming. As they look up, there's this man, completely naked, hair grown out, cuts all over his body, screaming at the top of his lungs, shackles and chains hanging off his feet and ankle. And the disciples said, Jesus, are you sure you want to stop here? Why don't we just go a little further up shore? And Jesus said, hey, this is exactly where I plan to get off. I've got a meeting with this man. And it says in verse 6, Jesus, he's running up to him, and he falls down before him on his face. If you look at the King James Version, it said he fell down and worshiped him. That's not the kind of worship we just had here, though. See, this wasn't an act of worship. This was an acknowledgement of authority. And what's so crazy is that at this point, these demons, because he was possessed by 5,000 demons. That word legion, I know this is church. You guys probably heard it many times. It's a military word. It refers to 5,000 to 6,000 Roman soldiers. So we'll be conservative and say 5,000. This man was possessed by 5,000 demons that have consumed him and changed him and ruined it. And as soon as Jesus says, what is your name? He says, my name is Legion. These 5,000 demons had a better understanding of Jesus Christ and his deity than his disciples did. He said, what do you mean? Well, if you read chapter 4, in the middle of that happened, it tells us that Jesus is asleep at the stern of the boat, and the disciples are standing there on the boat in fear for their life. Most of these men were raised on the water. Most of these men made their living on the water. They were fishermen. They've been in bad waters. They've been in rough seas before. So for them to be afraid, for them to be scared and truly think they're about to die, it was a serious storm. They said the waves were just smashing against the boat. It was going all over the side of it, about to flood the boat. Thunder, lightning. They're arguing, you wake him up. No, John, you wake him up. He's your favorite. No, Peter, I always get in trouble. You wake him up. So one of the disciples wakes him up, and they say to Jesus, what are you doing? Are you not afraid? We're about to lose our life. Jesus says, what are you talking about? It tells us that Jesus stands up and he says 3 words. He says, peace, be still. Like that, the waves stop. Like that, the thunder's done. Like that, the sun's out. And the disciples look at each other in that moment. As they look at each other, they say, who is he that even the sun, even the wind and the waves will obey him? And Jesus says, what are you talking about? Who am I? You guys know this. Do you still have no faith? Listen, so if that's you in here this morning, and you've heard these stories, you've heard these comeback stories, you've read the amazing accounts of the Bible, but sometimes you struggle with your faith, I pray that this morning this encourages you, that the regular meeting with the corporate body every Sunday morning encourages you here. A church community is so important. There's no such thing as Lone Ranger Christians. If you read through the Bible, we weren't made to be Lone Ranger Christians. So we teach our men and our women in our houses that the body of the church is so important because most of our people come from generational cycles of addiction, generational cycles of crime. I had a man on Thanksgiving Day, 19 years old, Ryder Williams, get dropped off from Jefferson City by the U.S. Marshals. He got released to the custody of Freeway Ministries. 12 years old, his mom stuck a needle of methamphetamine in his arm, shot him up. They were using buddies and drug buddies. That was normal life for him. He didn't know anything different. So what happens when it's Thanksgiving time? What happens when it's Christmas time? Ryder came home. You guys, it's the local church. You become his family. All the men in my life growing up were toxic. They discipled me in how to be bad, how to be evil, how to be wicked. But I became a part of a local church, and for the first time ever, I had godly men in my life. Saints. God put saints in my life that loved me and held me accountable, taught me how to be a man of God, and that's through the local church. So that's why Freeway Ministry, local church. So we see this demon-possessed man have an encounter with Christ. And at that very moment, we also see what happens when a statistic encounters Christ. His life was changed. This man's situation appears hopeless, not just to himself. You know, so many nights, it said always, he was in the tombs crying out, cutting himself. You know, he thought he was never going to get out of it. He thought he was never going to make it out of it. He said, this is it for me. The Gerasenes thought he was never going to make it out of it. They didn't go keep checking on him. He didn't have family drop off meals after Sunday church. He didn't have friends stop by and check on him. He was there alone. I spent that time so much alone thinking I would never get out of this. One of my times in the cardiac ICU, I have just IVs hooked up all to me, but I had been there so many times, and I don't know if you guys know this, but addicts are really manipulative, very creative, and they're very resourceful. It's like MacGyver addicts, if you guys know who MacGyver is. So I've been there so many times, you know, and if you ever spend any time in the hospital, you'll see is you have IVs in your IV, you have the pole, the drip bag. They have that little machine. If there's too much air bubbles go in the machine will start going off and beeping. Well, when that would happen, I'd start watching the nurses. I would start watching what buttons they would hit to turn the alarm off. And then I figured out quickly, I was detoxing there through the hospital, but I figured out quickly what they were using to detox me on the IV drip bag that I could get high off of. So when you have IVs, they have these syringes and they just kind of twist into your IV. Well, they would throw them away in the trash. As soon as they leave, I'd start collecting them out of the trash. And then I'd say I have to go to the bathroom, and I'd go to the bathroom, I'd take my IV pull in there, and I would start taking it right out of my drip. And as soon as the alarm would go off, I'd turn it off real quick. And then I would stash them throughout the hospital room. And whenever I wanted to shoot up from the drugs that they were giving me, I would do it, and I would just twist it and do it. They finally noticed, put me under watch the whole time. But I was so desperate, I didn't care. I thought I'm never getting out of this. It doesn't matter. This is all that there's ever going to be. That was what this man thought until he meets Jesus, Son of the Most High, right? Listen, Jesus Christ is a liberator. He's liberating people today just like he was 2,000 years ago. This morning, if you're sitting in here, no matter how young, how old you are, whatever you're walking through, whatever season you're going through this morning, Jesus Christ can liberate you this morning. You bring it to the altar. Listen, there's nothing special about these altars. There's nothing special about any altars. It's a place where things go to die if you look in the Bible. Let me ask you, would you pick something up dead and carry it around with you all day? No. At the end of the service, we're going to have altar call. I encourage you guys to get up here and leave it here. Don't take it with you. Because Jesus Christ can liberate you. See, this man needed somebody that could be more powerful than these 5,000 demons. I needed somebody more powerful than my own addiction and hopelessness and darkness. Josh Pruitt, after 25 years, needed somebody more powerful than his own power, and that's Jesus Christ. It is Christ alone. This man understood the authority of Christ once he dropped to his knees, and this man freed him. Jesus gave him a new life. And you can completely see that this encounter is one-sided. Jesus is in control, but just like he's always in control. And sometimes we need to be reminded that. We need to be reminded that he's always in control. And when we grow up in church and we grow up in Awana and we go to mission trips and we're in life groups, we know that. We know it up here, but sometimes when it gets hard, when we get those phone calls, when we have those family situations, sometimes we need to be reminded that. And if you're only opening up your Word of God on Sunday mornings and you're only hearing it when somebody else is preaching, one day a week's not going to keep you fed. You need to be in this every single day. This is what we teach our men and women. Every day before they walk out of the house, they have to spend 30 minutes in the Bible before they leave the discipleship house. They can't just say, hey, I was in my room, I did my Bible study. No, we make them go in the living room and in the kitchen. That way there's accountability. People all around them. They start learning these habits. They start learning that when they graduate, they will be equipped. How to get a job, how to keep a job, how to quit a job the right way. A lot of them don't know that. How to have bank accounts. Some of the stuff that we take for granted. They sit around a table almost every night of the week and eat together. That's normal for some of you. You grew up doing that. A lot of them have never sat at a dinner table before. Not everybody comes from that background, but about 90% of our men and women do. But it's no respecter of persons. We had a guy come in our house when we had a freeway in Nixon, Missouri. He was raised in a Christian home. He went to a Christian college, played basketball in Southern California for this college. He came back to Springfield. He opened Hebrews Coffee Shop, a Christian coffee shop. It blew up. He had 3 different locations. Never touched drugs before, 25 years old. Messes around with pills for the first time. Gets hooked on heroin. Loses all his Christian coffee shops. Within 6 months, he's still in cars, driving them to Columbia and driving them to Jeff City to chop shops. He gets arrested, goes to jail. They release him to the custody of Freeway Ministries. He didn't grow up in that lifestyle. Now he actually married Alex's cousin, which is Pastor Eddie Lyons in Springfield. It's his daughter, one of his daughters. They just had a baby. Just a statistic. Even the few years he fell into that category, he was just a statistic. But what we get to see, just like this man here, is what happens when you creation. You don't carry that label around anymore. As we're closing and we look at this, it tells us at the end of this 20 verses that this man was sitting there, and it said the herdsmen, the people that were watching these pigs, it said they ran away because they were scared and they were afraid. They go back to town and said they're telling everybody. They're telling everybody about this pig murder, and they're telling everybody about the crazy man. And then all the townspeople get there, and it said well, as soon as they pull up, they get there and they see this man clothed and in his right mind. And they look around, and the response was they were afraid. They begged Jesus to leave. Jesus could have left. He rightfully could have left. But let me tell you about my Jesus. What'd he do? He loved him so much. He took this butt-naked lunatic and turned him into one of the very first evangelists that we get to see in the New Testament. This man that was deranged and out of his mind, he sees Jesus and the disciples leaving. He said, Jesus, let me go with you. I can't go back. Nobody wants me at home. Those relationships are burned. My family doesn't want me back. My neighbors don't want me back. Let me go with you guys. Let me serve with you. And it seems unloving, and Jesus is like, no, you can't come with us. But what it is, it's a perfect picture of love because Jesus sent him back so the Gerasenes could have another chance to hear about the love and the mercy of Jesus Christ. And that's what he said. He says, go back. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors, tell your coworkers, tell your boss. Tell them about me. Go to the Decapolis. That's not just one place. This is a region, a large house, city to city, town to town. Go tell them about the love and the mercy that Jesus Christ had for you. Listen, he loved the Gerasenes so much he sent somebody back to give them another chance. And maybe that's you this morning. You're on your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th chance. You need another chance. It might not be addiction. It might look completely different. But my wife, who was raised in the mission field, who was a homeschool kid, that did theater, we couldn't be more differently apart than what God paired us together. We've never seen drugs. Listen, the God of the Bible, the blood that was shed on the cross of Calvary is the same blood that cleansed her white as snow and kept her from splitting hell wide open, just like he did me, the drug addict. And it's the same Jesus for you this morning. So this morning, if you guys want to stand with me, we're going to close out, and I want to invite you guys to have a time of response, to respond to the amazing worship that we started out with this morning. We could have honestly just had an altar call after that. The message, if God put something on your heart, if you know somebody, if you have a friend, family member, coworker that's struggling, and you feel like it's hopeless, you feel like they're just never going to get out of that, maybe that's just you in your walk this morning. Just said, I know these things, Lord, but I need my faith replenished. I need it revived. I need a little wind in my sail this morning. Just want to invite you guys, come up here and respond as we're going to close out. I'm going to pray, and they're going to finish in this song, but I'm going to go ahead and pray for us.
Thank you for joining us today online. We hope that you were blessed by what you experienced. Whether you continue watching from home or join us in person, we want you to know that you are a valuable part of our Life Church family and invite you to join us again next week. If you have any questions about what you've heard today, or you've made a decision to take whatever that next step was for you in your faith journey, please reach out to us at www.lchw.cc. Once again, thank you for watching today's service. We pray that God will continue to bless and guide you in the days ahead. Have a wonderful week, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.